Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll start the meeting pretty much right at 1:30. The date is Wednesday, August 28th, 2024, and we'll call to order. So first, we'll recognize we're doing our business today on the territories, principally doing our business on the territories of the Hoopa and Shot First Nations. Recognize, affirm, and appreciate that fact. But also, since our meeting is a hybrid format, we also have folks coming to you live from all manner of New Chonros, Coast Salish, potentially the Kwanghan-speaking people's territory as well. And with that, we will ensure that people understand that because we're having our meeting in a hybrid format, that the meeting is being recorded and is being broadcast onto YouTube, which you can get through YouTube itself or through our website. And the way in which we'll do question period, other than the folks who are in the gallery, and we do have folks in the gallery, which is awesome, is we have an email address, responses at acrd.bc.ca, responses@acrd.bc.ca, and that will be the way in which we receive any questions for question period at the end of the agenda. We won't be monitoring the chat on YouTube, and sometimes we monitor the questions and answers and chat on the Zoom, but that's not as reliable as email address would be. With that in mind, we will do a round of introductions around the table and identify the staff members who are in the meeting here today, and then we'll go through and have folks online introduce themselves. So we'll start here, and Heather, do you want to start? Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Hi, my name is Debbie Haggard. I am Councillor for the City of Port Alberni and appointed representative of the Regional District and Vice Chair of the Regional District Board.
Penny Cote. I'm the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Director for Sprout Lake on this board. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Sparrow, Regional Director for Cherry Creek. Good afternoon, Kel Roberts, Alternate Director for Area C.
Right.
Awesome. Greg, if we can get you to mute, thank you.
Hi, I'm Daniel Siam, the CAO for the ACRD.
And Oklama Sayachat, my name is John Jack. I'm the chair of the ACRD and representative for Hwayet. Okay, so online we'll go to Susan. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Roth, Director for Beaver Creek.
And Tom?
Yes, good afternoon, Councillor Tom Steer coming to you from the Helshtuk Nation, just off of Bella Bella here, appointed director from the District of Tofino.
And Bob?
Good afternoon, Bob Beckett, Area A, Bamfield.
And Marilyn?
Good afternoon, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
And Fred?
Say my name, but Fred Boyko, Electoral Director for Beaufort. Thank you.
And Shari?
Good afternoon, Shari Minions, Mayor for the City of Port Alberni.
Mariah?
Good afternoon, Mariah Kusful, Hochelaga Tribe Government. Thank you, Chu.
And Lavana?
Good afternoon, Lavana Mastrangelo, Director from Ucluelet First Nation, Ucluelet South Territory.
Great, and we missed a couple of staff members on the other side. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Alex Dyer, Planning Manager.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
Awesome, and I don't think we missed anybody because Penny is here, even though she's on there too. Okay. All right, with that in mind, we do have the agenda before us. Do we have any items to add to the agenda, delete, or any late items? Okay, I would add that we had a lot of information that was too big to include in the document, the main agenda document. So there are things that you can download through the website as well, which include like the emissions plan and the forestry plan for Hwayet and so on and so forth. They're all on under the meeting section for the day. Okay, so if we could have a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Thank you, Dr. Roberts, seconded by Dr. Sparrow. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to declarations. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest or gifts exceeding $250 in value? Seeing none.
Oh, wait a minute here.
Yeah. I think the only, go ahead, Director Roth.
I'd like to declare conflict of interest with item 9.1I.
9.1I. Okay, 9.1I, Walker Road, Beaver Creek.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank
So
you.
I'm just making a note here, and what we'll do is we'll just pause right before that and let you get Janice or someone to put you in the waiting room. The only other one I was wondering about, and I'm looking for it, is the Hewett Forestry item. Is, I believe, 7E. Yeah, it's correspondence for information, so we don't require any information or any decisions there, so I won't be removing myself, but I can answer any questions if need be. Dr. Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll have to declare conflict on item 6C, correspondence for action. It is item 6C, yes, request for support Canadian Coast Guard news release.
You know, that would have slipped my mind, even though I know yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, I think that covers it off now. Are there any other items? Director Minions, go ahead.
Sorry, I missed this one because it's in planning matters, but I will declare a conflict on E, 9.1E. I don't have a vote on this anyways, but I'll step out of the meeting anyways. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so I think that makes sense for the amount of planning matters we have to get through today. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for their declarations. That brings us to the adoption of minutes. Item 4A is the Board of Directors meeting minutes for July 24th, 2024. Do anyone like to move that? Thank you, Director Cote. Seconded by Dr. Coots. Thank you. Any further comments, errors, omissions, additions, etc.? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Item B is the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee dated July 24th, 2024. Thank you, Dr. Sparrow, for moving, seconded by Director Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Item C is the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting dated July 30th, 2024. Would anyone like to move? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow, seconded by Dr. Cote. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Second to last is the Bamfield Area Services Committee dated August 13th, 2024. Moved by Dr. Beckett, seconded by Director Coots. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. And lastly, the Agricultural Development Committee meeting dated August 20th, 2024. Moved by Director Cote. Thanks. And seconded by Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? I think you're just adjusting your glasses. Thank you. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to petitions, delegations, and presentations. Normally for each of these items, we have a 10-minute maximum for the presentation itself. That doesn't include the comments and questions after the presentation. Normally speaking, if we think you're going to go over time for your presentation, I'll just hit pause and ask the board if we can continue on. If it looks like you're pretty close to the end of your presentation, though, I may give you 1 or 2 extra minutes. And if you're here in the room and you see me hold up 1 finger or 2 fingers, that's how much time you have left in minutes. It's not me trying to interrupt. I'll just interrupt you if I need to do that. With that in mind, first up, we have Ms. Catherine McDougall for the Climate Planning and Research Specialist, who's working on the Community Energy Association, presenting on our corporate energy and emissions plan. So thank you and welcome, Catherine. And oh, you're already presenting. Awesome. Thank you. Please take it away.
So I think, hi, I'm Peter Robinson, also with the Community Energy Association. So I'll just kick things off with the first few slides and then hand it over to Catherine. And so I'm Director of Climate Planning and Research at CEA, been with CEA for 16 years. And Catherine and then Josie, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, it's nice to see everyone today. I'm Catherine McDougall, Climate Planning and Research Specialist with CEA. And Josie?
And I'm Josie Howard, the Senior Lead in Climate Planning and Implementation with CEA.
And thank you, Chair, and to the board for having us here. So next slide, please, Catherine. So as an organization, we've been around for about coming up to 30 years, and we are a registered charity. We just have the charitable mandate to help communities in Canada with energy sustainability and climate action. It's very simple. That's all we do. Next slide. So our agenda today, we've done introductions. We're going to go through some quick context on the Corporate Energy Emissions Plan, and Catherine is going to take you on a very quick tour of the ACRD's corporate plan. And then Josie will just wrap things up with a couple of things at the end. Next slide, please. So just so we are clear, there's a lot of communities have community plans, community energy emissions plans. That's everything within their local government boundary, whether it's regional, district, or municipality within that boundary. But what we're talking about today is what's to the right, which is a corporate energy emissions plan, which is your own assets. Next slide, please. And so local governments have varying spheres of influence over emissions within their boundaries. And obviously your own assets are what you have the highest degree of influence over. So your own infrastructure, your own buildings, your own fleet. Next slide, please. And so there's a lot of benefits to a corporate plan. So it fulfills your climate action charter obligations. Last I heard, every community in BC except for one is a member, has signed the climate action charter. And so signing the climate action charter and meeting things under that allows you to receive the LGCAP funding, the Local Government Climate Action Program funding. A corporate energy emissions plan can also help you to reduce your energy expenditures, because by saving money on energy, by using less energy, you'll save less money on energy. And so we hope, of course, that can lead to better value for money for taxpayers. There can be potential to improve services at the same time. We've seen, obviously, LED lights can be a good example of that. You can provide more light, but for, fewer kilowatt hours for less money. Reducing exposure to fluctuating energy prices, more efficient vehicles are a good example of that. As we've seen, substantial fluctuations over the last several years in the prices of gasoline and diesel, for example, through the Russia-Ukraine situation. And electricity prices have, of course, been rising over the last several years as well. And demonstrating leadership. Local governments are very interested in showing how they lead on climate action, and showing in your own assets what you're doing is a good way to help lead the way for the rest of the community. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll be handing over to Catherine. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, so now that Peter has given some context about what corporate climate action planning is, I'm going to go through some of the current energy and emissions projections, and then also potential actions that the regional district could take. So to start off, this is a snapshot of the 2022 emissions and expenditures. So you'll see the chart on the left is showing the total emissions. You'll see the breakdown from different fuels. So you'll see that diesel is responsible for 83% of emissions, and some of that is from ACRD's own fleet. But a large portion, actually a majority of it, is from contracted waste collection. And then you'll see some of those other fuels in there. So again, from the fleet, gasoline, and then the buildings are responsible for quite a small portion with the electricity, natural gas, and propane. Then if you look at the pie chart on the right, this is the breakdown of costs. So it looks a little different. Again, a large portion of that coming from diesel, so over half, not only ACRD's fleet, but contracted waste collection. And then a large portion of electricity costs. So nearly 40% of those costs going toward electricity. So in the buildings, but then also in infrastructure like streetlights and water pumping. The last table here we have on the right, so that shows the top 3 ACRD services. So the emissions and expenditures going to those services. The first 2 there are the waste collection services. So the majority of those emissions and costs are coming from that waste collection, but there is also a few facilities and some gasoline in ACRD's fleet included in there. but a majority is that contracted services. And then number 3 is the Beaver Creek water system. So that is coming from ACRD's fleet vehicles and those water pumps, which can be quite expensive. All right, so what we're suggesting in the plan can be grouped into these 5 categories. So we want to improve energy performance and lower emissions in new and existing regional district buildings and facilities. We want to increase the use of renewable energy, so things like solar photovoltaics, improve energy efficiency and reduce emissions in the regional district's fleet, and then also taking those enabling actions and corporate leadership. So we have the breakdown of emission reduction and cost savings for all these actions we're recommending in the plan, but today we're just going to go through the top 3. So at number 1, we have investing in EVs and EV charging stations, so electric vehicles, where available and practical. And of course, this is just for ACRD's fleet, so not looking at contracted services or the public. And you'll see here in the blue bar and the gray bar, that's showing the potential gasoline and diesel emission reductions. Then number 2, we have implementing building energy audits. So that's taking what was suggested in the energy audit and implementing those actions in the form of energy retrofits. So that would be reducing the emissions in buildings. So say improving insulation, replacing doors and windows, or increasing the efficiency of heating equipment. And then number 3, we have fuel efficient driver training and anti-idling policy. So smaller potential there, but fairly low cost or no cost opportunity. All right, and then for costs, so this is just showing the fuel savings. So I want to be really clear that it's not looking at, the entire payback, but it's just looking at those fuel cost savings. So number 1, we have implementing solar PV installations on buildings. So looking at some of those high cost buildings or water infrastructure, there's a lot of potential there for solar PV. Number 2, we have implementing building energy audits. So you'll see a majority of those savings could come from reducing electricity use and getting electricity cost savings, and then a small portion of natural gas and propane. That's just in a handful of buildings. And then number 3, again, we have that investing in EVs and EV charging stations. So a variety of cost savings there, potentially under gasoline, diesel, as well as selling low carbon fuel standard credits, which is an opportunity to improve that business case. All right, so I got a lot going on these charts here, but I just want to point you to the overall trend. So on the graph on the left, you'll see that's business as usual. So if the regional district themselves weren't going to implement any of these actions, this is how they might see the emissions trend. So slight down, but not nearly as much as we need it to be. And then on the right chart, you'll see this is under full implementation. So if all the actions we recommended in the plan were implemented, this is how you could see the overall emissions trend down. And then you'll see there the diesel does have the contract excluded. So this is just looking at the emissions just from ACRD's facilities and fleet, what they have the most control over. All right, and then my last slide here before I pass it to Josie. So a few things about institutionalizing this plan and monitoring it. So some key things that can help you incorporate this plan. So you want to incorporate it into everything you can at the regional district, like job descriptions, plans, budgets, monitor your progress. We have a list of indicators in the plan, convene, getting together with other local government staff, stakeholders, and the board, of course. Reporting on these things and then renewing it as these actions get completed. We have a variety of funding sources listed in the plan, as well as implementation support that CA offers. And I'll leave that to Josie to discuss more.
Great, thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everyone. I've been collaborating with BC Hydro to develop energy management implementation supports for small to mid-sized local governments and Indigenous communities, particularly those who don't currently have a dedicated energy manager on staff. And the model we've come up with is to have a shared energy manager from CEA to represent multiple local governments under BC Hydro's Commercial Energy Manager program. And this is currently dominated by larger communities in the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island. So this will give communities access to the various incentives, rebates, trainings, and support that they might not otherwise qualify for. Just to give an example, ACRD's annual electricity consumption is under 2 gigawatt hours. So it doesn't actually meet the eligibility requirements for BC Hydro's funded energy audits. But if they're combined with other communities, including some member municipalities such as Port Alberni, then ACRD could qualify for these kinds of programs. There will also be efficiencies from aggregating work regionally, as well as leveraging funding opportunities or even joint procurement initiatives. For example, with solar PV, that could be a great opportunity. So the general process would be guided by the shared energy manager, and it would be to undertake the energy audits and prioritize projects, as well as develop the budget proposals during the first year of the program. In the second year, the focus would then shift to support for implementation to meet energy savings targets. So examples of types of projects might include recommissioning and controls, or energy efficiency retrofits, or solar. Another objective is to build local capacity. And this is through access to workshops, developing tailored trainings for operational staff and other resources. The position is 50% funded by BC Hydro and up to $60,000. And we're currently inviting between 6 to 10 local governments to take part. So the cost of the per participating community would depend on the size of the community and as well as their facility portfolio. So that's just a brief overview, and we're happy to provide more information. We have a 2-pager that we can share with you. We're also working with BC Hydro on a webinar for later in September, which we'll invite ACRD staff to, which will detail some of the great incentives programs that have recently been announced for BC Hydro and how the smaller and mid-sized local governments can access these. Thank you.
Perfect. And that is all we have today. So yeah, happy to take questions, and thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you, and on time as well. So with that, if you could stop sharing, that would be great. And Director Boyko, you had a question, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to go back about 3 slides. So you have the graph where you have emissions going to 0 in 2 different forms. I have a question about that. That one right there.
This one, yeah.
So what you're saying is by 2050, the federal target plan is for emissions to go to 0 for all 5 categories. Is that what this is showing us?
Right. So yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so this is showing the federal target of net 0 by 2050. So not necessarily their plan, like all the plans in place or the regulations in place, but is showing, yeah, the federal government's 2050 net 0 target.
So our plan in the next 24 years, 26 years is to get rid of electricity, propane, natural gas. How realistic is that? It's a rhetorical question, and I know we don't have an answer for it, but I'm just putting it out there that I don't think this is an actual realistic, achievable target. Second question, if we're proposing to change the ACRD vehicles to electric, I know a lot of them go to Bamfield and back where there is very little or no charging stations, and they also go to the West Coast, Ucluelet, Tofino area where there are charging stations, but that would take away from the time the ACRD staff actually have time to work as opposed to sitting at a charging station. Is that actually a plan to happen, or is that just a thought that this might happen in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that second one, and then I'll let Peter go back to that first one. So there was a great report done, not by us, but by the consultants before us that did a full fleet assessment. So it does address some of those things, like the charging infrastructure, and how far the vehicles can go between charges. So that leading ahead report, it is included as an appendix to this report. And in the report, we also do talk about the timeline. So it's not necessarily that 100% of the fleet will be able to change over, next year, but gradually, ones that are making those shorter trips will be, the better opportunities for switching over. And Peter, I'll pass it to you for that first question.
Sure, thank you. And through the chair to Director Boyko, it's, we do set long-term aspirational targets. There's a lot of things that we don't know how we're going to do in the next 26 years. Things have changed remarkably fast in the last, 5 years or 10 years. I think, for example, it wasn't long ago that that the Department of Energy in the US set a $1, what they called their Earthshot target, so like the moonshot target for solar, and they thought, you know, we're going to get solar to $1 a watt, and everyone thought, you know, you're crazy. And now solar panels, if you buy them outside of North America anyway, are just 10% of the price of that. So things have changed extremely fast. And so, yes, you know, we do know how we're going to get to certain things, you know, within, say, if we look at the charts on the right here, we have a pretty clear pathway, we think, to getting close to these sorts of targets, say by 2030, if we implement a lot of different things. But there's going to be, you know, a lot of, you know, certain things which are difficult through to 2050, and there will need to be removals of CO2 from the atmosphere as well, whether that's done through natural means, direct air capture, for example, like the system in Squamish, or through other means as well.
Perfect, thank you. Just as a follow-up, I know the federal government has tariffs on solar panels coming from China and other places. So we want to do something or biting our hand to feed it to save a small industry in Canada. And at the same time, they just announced other tariffs on electric vehicles coming into Canada. So we're getting mixed messages from the federal government on how we actually want to proceed on that to actually make it happen. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Steer.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the synthesis. It was an extensive report, quite detailed, so I do appreciate the time you took to give that explanation. And because I was going to have a recommendation once it comes down under agenda item that we bring it to a committee of the whole for further discussion on the adoption of the plan. So thank you very much. And it's more just a comment in terms of our ability as a small regional district with limited, as you understand, financial resources. And so one of the things that I think are of concern for us, of course, is our obligations under that climate action charter and wanting to be responsible, but also recognizing the limited ability in terms of our abilities to raise revenues through taxation, of course, and the implications of that to those that do pay those taxes. And so I'm hoping within this and maybe with discussions with our CFO in terms of ways for us to leverage those types of grant funding and to really chart out through our asset management plan how we can incorporate those into those aspirational targets as Director Boyko was maybe pointing out for the 2050. So I just wanted to bring that up and thank you for your presentation, and then look forward to further conversation maybe with our staff in terms of ways that we can look at fulfilling those obligations through a more comprehensive look at how we can achieve that in a responsible way to our taxpayers.
Thank you. Any comments, Peter or Catherine? Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you so much. And actually, I wanted to just check to see if Josie also had a follow-up. Just so through the chair to Director Steer, it is a particularly rich funding environment at the moment. It might not be as rich in 2 or 3 years. We don't know, but it is very rich right now. And so, you know, in terms of providing, you know, value for money to local taxpayers, good idea to try to do what some other communities are doing and try to bring as much of that money locally as you can. Just wanted to check to see if Josie or Catherine had any follow-up.
Sure, I can follow up through the chair to Director Steer. Yeah, I think one great thing that we're seeing from the results of this plan is that in terms of reducing your greenhouse gas emissions, you're currently using primarily electricity, whereas most places have a huge challenge ahead of them in reducing the natural gas use, which is far more substantial in a lot of places. Having said that, switching to more efficient forms of electrical heating, such as heat pumps, might require some investment, but that's where the kind of type of program that I'm trying to work on right now and collaborating with BC Hydro is to help precisely the communities lacking some of the staffing capacity to be able to leverage and access some of these funds. And it firstly starts with the detailed energy audits, and that's where you get some fairly high level idea of the costs as well as the different funding opportunities that you can access. And in terms of the opportunities with heat pumps combined with solar, it means that the paybacks are far better than previously, given that BC Hydro is providing significant funds for the capital costs of those.
Great, thank you. And just to follow up on some of the questions that come about, and I appreciate that, and I am familiar with some of those incentive programs. that are coming forward. And I think of things when I look to the specifically directly to the ACRD, where you've identified some of the EV replacement of our vehicles. And I look to our asset management plan when we are going through there and how we attrition those large upfront capital costs and how hopefully having, as I think was pointed out by Peter, right now is quite a ripe environment, but that may change at the federal level. I suspect in all likelihood it may. So I thank you for that. And we look forward to furthering this conversation.
Okay, I had one question in regards to this to what degree, because just keying in on the idea of net zero, not necessarily 0, have you investigated where we might be going as a province or a country in regards to carbon credits or something like that? Those are the types of things that we would likely have to see local communities and places that are not wealthy areas benefit from, to see the province and the federal government share some of that credit that they would be accumulating over time by making various decisions. And are there actions that we can take in that avenue where we could gain our own carbon credits to help offset some of the diesel we just won't be able to get away from because, you know, heavy equipment and so on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the question. So I think one of the things that jumps to mind with respect to that, so from a natural asset perspective, is the Great Bear Rainforest, also Darkwoods near Nelson, which have been, you know, forested lands have been set aside, and you know, local communities or local First Nations have. Certainly in the case of the Great Bear Rainforest, I believe it's actually a First Nation-led project, where they've benefited from that. And so that's a good way to account for emissions that otherwise, you know, you wouldn't be able to reduce is through that kind of natural asset project. Another example actually is the Resort Municipality of Whistler, with two of their First Nations, the way they manage their community forest. They also are able to get some carbon credits as well. Of course, that's a much smaller scale than the Great Bear Rainforest.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Great Bear Rainforest, and that's a great idea. I guess the more we know about how that develops over time, that's how hopefully we would make up the gap on the 2050 target. Dr. Cote, you had a comment?
Thank you. Question through the chair. Is education part of this plan? I know that BC Hydro has some grants out there right now for solar panels for residential and for local governments, businesses. So is promoting those part of this plan, or is there an education portion? Thank you.
Through the chair to Director Cote. Through some conversations with staff, our understanding is that, so while this particular plan just looks at your corporate assets, but staff did mention that one of the next steps might be to consider looking at a community energy emissions plan, is my understanding. And that should include, you know, yes, education. So yes, BC Hydro, brand new, has incentives, has funding for residential solar as well as residential batteries. So for those inconvenient power cuts. And actually that very recently as well, Josie briefly mentioned this, but that extends to local governments as well for solar and batteries. Just as one example, there's other funding as well. So heat pumps, for example.
Okay. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and yeah, we will endeavor to see more happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that brings us to the next item in petitions, delegations, and presentations. I'd like to ask Mr. Clark Power to come on up. And you'll have to hit the red button. I think Alex is going to help you though. And thank you and welcome.
Thank you. I'm acting as agent for basically my mom and her fiance on their property. The map I have here kind of shows the area. Main thing from the first discussion when it was brought to you guys at the board was kind of density. Their property's 1.28 acres. And I've done a calculation of pretty much every property around there. And 5525 across the street is at a 17% lot coverage. 5511 Maple Street, which is also across the street and down one, is at a 21.5% lot coverage. The one right next to it on the same side of the road and down is 13% lot coverage. My mom's current property is only 7% lot coverage, would go to 11 with the cabins built, if all four were built. And the other property going further down on the corner is 13% lot coverage. The only property in the area, which is the one just above it towards me, is sitting at 7%, which is the same as my mom's current, and that is a smaller lot. I have 4 cabins built on my property out Beaver Creek. They sit in a total area of 125 feet by 135 feet. That's the total impact of the area that they take up, which is 0.38 of an acre. And this property is 1.28. It's less than a third of the property. And that includes the parking, the setbacks, everything that's required by regional district. I've got a plan for septic for a wastewater management person. I've spoken with McGill's Engineering to do a water runoff so that there's no further impact to the area for drainage. Do a retention pond. I'm currently running an Airbnb with 4 cabins on it in the same manner. I have neighbors that didn't even know I was been renting for the last year or more. So every one of the letters that came in directed about ideas of parking, problems with people partying, creating issues. Not one person spoke to me, asked how things are going, or even asked me how the ones I have currently are running. I have no problems. I've had no complaints. I don't think regional districts heard one thing about my property that's currently running that way. This property is a future for my family. It'll probably be maybe 5 years or more before I even consider building on site. I'm doing the zoning because the process takes a length of time. I don't want to be held back on permits because I got to spend a year and a half of zoning. So that's why we started now. And it may not impact any of the neighbors if it never happens even. So the zoning is just a request for zoning. There's no guarantee that building's going to start in any length of time. I don't really have much more to say. I've built them and I have people from all over the world coming to my place, and we have 10 out of 10 reviews across the board. People are loving it. I think it's needed. This is the biggest parcel of land in the area. And then the large tree cover that's on the back side, most of that land, other than my mom's piece, is actually owned on the other side of the tracks by Anna Berry. And that's not part of those other parcels. Those are all much smaller parcels all along there. The neighbor right below them is like 0.65 of an acre, which is almost basically half of what the one we're dealing with is. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Clark, for coming in and talking about the updates there. Talking about calculations, I just wonder if people could go to page 222 of their agenda. Now, we got an engineering report that says typical dwelling is 23 feet by 27 feet, and that equals 500 square feet. Previous application had this up to 900 square feet, but if you pull out your calculators, 23 times 27 is well over 600. So I just wonder what the discrepancy is there, and will that be corrected for a second time? One of the major other concerns out here was the neighbors were all upset about potential parking and things like that. Has the applicant actually talked to the neighbors or addressed their concerns, or do we have any updated letters on that? That's been the questions for staff. Thank you.
So for the
Alex?
first one,
Yeah, go ahead.
I can speak on the first one, which was the square footage. The square footage is calculated off of living space. So the walls thickness and this walls that are interior and staircases don't count to square footage. So my cabins I currently have are 23 by 27. And they sit at 900 square feet because they're a story and a half. Which currently it says 500 square feet on the main floor of living space is what the zoning bylaw states.
Alex?
Yeah, thank you. Just on the comments about public input periods. So the regional district did not seek additional correspondence or input from the neighbors. In this case, you will recall that back in the meeting in June, there were 5 letters that have been received by the board already. And what the applicant has done is attempt to address some of those concerns. I will highlight that one of the alternate options that is detailed in the report is that the board could direct staff to seek additional public input on the application before making a decision on the bylaw, and that will be available to us if we'd like to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Roth?
Hi, thank you. I'm glad that we'll have another opportunity to go back to the public, but my question is, would the cabins include a second floor? Because you're talking about a footprint being 500 square feet, so you could go over and above. Is that something that you're thinking of?
Currently, I have no idea what I'm gonna build because I couldn't tell you what's gonna be the demand at the time that I'm looking to build. I'm looking for the zoning for that purpose. My property meets the current zoning. The proposed zoning changes in the regional district would go to 1 story with a half story, which is pretty much what I currently have. But currently I'm allowed to go to 3 stories with that zoning if I wanted to. I chose not to in my buildings that I built out Beaver Creek, just because it would be overkill. It's a little bit more. But also to address parking, if you look at the updated map that's in there, there's 2 parking spots per cabin because each cabin requires a 30-foot setback between each cabin. That'll easily hold 2 cars in between every single cabin. And like I said, I have a 125 by 135 footprint for the current cabins I have, which is all 4, and there's more than enough parking with no issues whatsoever. And currently the way it is it says 500 square feet of living space on the main floor. There's no control over how high someone goes in the current state of our zoning bylaw, and the proposed zoning bylaw had 500 square feet plus a half story. So I designed mine around the proposed zoning bylaw that was coming.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. Okay, next up, we have Mr. Greg Posnikoff, property owner regarding development variance application 24002. Thank you and welcome, Greg. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you. Hi. So yeah, I'm the owner of the lot in question, co-owner with my wife. Purchased the lot about 2 years ago. Prior to purchase, I had the site surveyed because I could see that it was going to be somewhat of a challenging lot, so I wanted to put the due diligence in before purchasing the property. And then followed through with the property purchase, went through extensive planning, design, went out there, laid out my first design, took additional survey shots and points, dug test bits to get an understanding of the subsurface soils, and then subsequently redesigned and refined. And so went through quite an extensive planning and design process to sort of optimize, well, not sort of, to optimize what I was proposing to build out there. in also considering, my surroundings, surrounding neighbors, the community as a whole, as well as the topography of the site. So going through that planning process, those thought processes, became clear I could achieve a better project by asking for a variance to the front yard setback. And variance was a 6-foot ask, which I felt was modest and fit with the needs. So yeah, that was kind of the background to my application, and that went forward for first review by the board here about 2 months ago. At that hearing, there was 5 lot owners that were represented that spoke out against the proposal. 5 lot owners of a total of 62 of the whole community. And some of the main themes that were brought forward were concerns in terms of impacts to their views, impacts to the stability of road and utilities, and proximity of the proposed house to the community road. And at that time, it was the board's direction to delay making a decision on the application and for myself to host a project information session with the lot owners. So I followed through and held 2 information sessions, one in person on site there. In preparation for that session, I had laid out the proposed footprint, the standard setback, the 6-foot variance setback, and went through with the folks that were able to attend the proposed plan in terms of layout and elevations, the proposed elevations to the property. So did that in person, and then a week later I held an online session for those that can attend in person. And in addition to those 2 sessions, I also fielded a variety of phone calls and emails, which I responded as appropriate. So went through all those processes, and going through that, became clear that I had a lot of support for folks out there in what I was proposing. And it also became clear that some of the folks that had initially spoken against it weren't fully aware, couldn't spatially sort of visualize what the proposal meant on site, and hence their opposition. Since then, it's my understanding that the folks that were initially opposed have rescinded that now that they have a better understanding of the project and the discussions I had with them. And then I think there was also some parties that also spoke for it, and I'm sure Alex has that in the package. So today I just kind of wanted to recap what I have done, and I feel that I have good, strong support, but I thought I would also run through the sort of highlights of the drawings just to ensure if there was any questions at this forum that I can answer them as well. So I'm just gonna share my screen.
Just a moment, Greg, if we could have
Sure.
a continue with the presentation. Thank you, Director Cote, seconded by Director Beckett. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
No.
What's happening here? Oh, there we go. Okay. Should be able to see it now.
Yep, we can see it now.
Perfect. Thank you. And sorry, I was like tight on time?
Yeah, technically you're about 3.5 minutes over. So if we can
Okay, I'll real quick then. Yeah, so Haggard's Cove, the property is central to the development, so pretty prominent location, and everybody entering the community is coming through the bay here, and ultimately coming up the road here and passing the property. So you know, very central to the community. So some of the things to consider was, views as you were coming up, as well as views from behind. So as you can see, the property has a bit of a flat plateau at the top, and that's what I'm trying to work with. And by cutting this area down approximately 2.5, 3 meters, I'm setting the house approximately, a story below the existing grade. So this area is being cut down, and then the fill will be along the edge. So visually from behind, this house is already being set down about, like say, a story, and from the front, by setting it back 6 feet, because the slope's about 2 to 1, would actually reduce how high the front of the house sticks out by approximately 3 feet or so. So from the front, it would reduce the visual impact there. And then as you can see, the front of the property line actually kind of angles away from the road, yet the road goes straight. So from the feel, as you're from the road side of things, it is very much the same as what is a standard setback from the property beside there. So, this 6-foot ask, I think really fits well with the sort of form and character of the existing lots on either side of me, as well as, works well from the topography of the land and the visual impact from the front, as well as what I'm doing from an impact from the houses behind, is setting the house down as far as I can. That is all I have. If there was any questions.
All right, thanks, Greg. I'm wondering if you could stop sharing just so I could see the screen a bit easier. There we go. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Greg? Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Greg for coming in person or not person, but virtually, to do the presentation and to share that information with us, especially reaching out to your community and your neighbors. As we all know, this matter is coming before the board, and I appreciate the work that Greg's done, as well as look forward to hearing directly from Alex with respect to what has transpired over the last 2 months. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. All righty, folks. That brings us into the next item on the agenda, which is item 6A, which is a correspondence for action. It's a request for a letter of support from the Port Alberni Air Quality Council, and it's requesting a letter to the Ministry of Forest regarding discouraging slash pile burning in populated areas. Would anyone like to speak to this from staff?
Staff.
No, from staff. Dr. Haggard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if we could look at this in a different way. Instead of trying to discourage burning, why don't we try and promote the harvesting of the waste wood? We have a paper mill that is crying for fiber. They barge it in from other places at huge cost to them when waste wood is being burned. So maybe look at it, let's try and promote the harvesting of the wood for our local mills instead of burning it.
Thank you. Director Beckett?
Thank you. I'm not sure if I missed it when I was going through the material, and I'm certainly understanding the importance of reducing, smoke in urban areas. I'm just wondering about the concern with respect to not getting rid of it and having additional fuel load on the forest floors.
Okay, thank you. Director Boyko?
Thank you, Chair. I echo the concern of Director Beckett there. We all saw what happened in Jasper in the last month or two. Controlling of debris in the wooded areas is important. Now, should we burn it all, or should we bury it, or should we turn it into fiber for the pulp mill? Those are all great ideas. But we still need to have an effective way of doing that. And me personally, in my place, if I don't take care of it, it's going to take over everything. And I'm sure everyone else has the same problem. One of the questions I asked last time this came up was, what is a populated area? And are we expected to apply this to the entire ACRD or just to the populated areas around the city, Cherry Creek, Sprout Lake, whatever? And how will we do that? But effective control of debris is very important for the environment, for fire safety. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments? Director Sparrow, please go ahead.
Thank you for that. I think we all agree that burning is not the answer we want to go to, so maybe let's support discouraging burning would be good. Find alternate ways of removing the mass somehow. So we achieve both goals of keeping our air good and also reducing the fuel load on the floor of the forest. The best thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sparrow. Director Boyko, do you have your hand up again, or did you not put it down? Oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so with that in mind, it sounds like we have the notion that we want to discourage burning, but we don't want to say that we're entirely opposed to it. Maybe it should be seen as a last resort, especially for the safety purposes. So if we can craft a letter that says it to that effect, then that would probably be the best way to go about doing this. I'm seeing a lot of nods from Cynthia and Heather and everyone, so I think that's something we can put together. So I'm wondering, whatever that ends up being, could we have someone to move that motion as amended? Thank you, Director Cote, seconded by Director Boyko. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. So we'll be sending a letter to the Ministry of Forests discouraging the fire burning of slash piles, and that we should be looking for other ways to go about using it, and that burning should only be a last resort for safety purposes. Dr. Haggard, go ahead.
Thank you. Could we also send another letter? I assume that's probably Mosaic that owns the wooded property around the region. Ask them to encourage the harvest of waste wood for fiber supply versus burning, and to that effect.
Could we just CC Mosaic on the one? Yeah, okay. All right. Do we have any other carbon copies we want to send? Maybe to our MLA and I guess our MP. Don't know that that matters from a land perspective. Send something to Silwakin as well. Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, I think that brings us to item B, which is the Emerald Sea Protection Society requesting a letter of support for the Clean Coast Clean Waters Initiative Fund to conduct shoreline cleanup of remote beaches on the Banfield Peninsula. Would anyone like to speak to this? Pretty straightforward. Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to make the motion. And I again, with the letter, I'd be really interested to know what materials, what products they're picking up on our area beaches. What might be local versus what has been driven in by the winds and currents. I would really appreciate knowing that. So, do you want me to read that motion out, Mr. Chair?
If you would like to, please go ahead.
That the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors provide a letter of support to Clean Coast Clean Water Initiative Fund for cleanup scheduled for September 11th to the 18th, 2024 at 5 locations on the Banfield Peninsula, subject to Emerald Sea Protection Society bringing in ocean cleanup debris as coastal cleanup waste under bylaw 1033, paying $175 per ton while ensuring no hazardous material is brought in.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Lots of folks. I'll say Director Roberts. And then we have a comment from Director Boyko. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just a clarification from staff. This is ACRD paying $175 per ton for this cleanup?
No, it'll be the Emerald Sea Society or Protection Society.
So we're just giving a letter of support to go ahead? Yeah, sounds good. I will be your seconder.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, let's kick Director Steer out. Oh, he's gone already. Janice, you're on it. Or whoever's running it. Okay. So I'll speak to this. This is there was recently about less than a month ago, there was news that the Coast Guard were going to de-staff two lighthouses, one at Pachina Point and another at Carmona Point. And this is something that is seen as not surprising, but also troubling, especially given the amount of support that active lighthouse workers have been giving to the area in terms of safety, not just on land or not just on the water, but on land as well. And so there was a request from a lot of folks, actually. There was a request from the Union of Lighthouse Keepers. I can't remember what they're called officially, but they were amazing to get some information from, as well as various folks who used to be lighthouse keepers at Pachina Point and at Carmona Point and other places. And so it seems like there's quite a swell of people who are opposed to the de-staffing of the lighthouses there. And so Pachina Point specifically resides within the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District, and Huu-ay-aht First Nations is supportive of the notion of coming a halt to that decision right away, just so that there can be proper consultation and review, especially given some of our citizens have literally been saved by the lighthouse keepers noticing that they were capsized when they hit a deadhead. And so this is like only a couple of years ago too. So I think for us, we would like the ACRD to be involved in a motion that would go as an emergency resolution to the Union of BC Municipalities for the entire group of EU-BCM to call a halt to this decision and to go back and look at this again, especially given the fact that it's very important to have safety personnel who are trained like they are to be out on the land. And so that's something that we think is not only worthwhile from a political and administrative perspective, like keeping the safety up there, but also the fact that doing so actually does check off all of the boxes for what's required of an emergency resolution at UBCM. That the person I've been working for working with is a person who's been a past president of the UBCM and has been working with the UBCM office on making sure they have an understanding that this is coming forward. What it needs, though, is not a past president to put this forward, but rather an actual community. And so we're hoping that the Union of BC Municipalities resolution would come from the regional district as a whole. In addition to that, it was suggested by staff, I think on Friday, that we also do a letter just so that there's a line of logic moving through all of these things. And so we're hoping that a resolution can be added for a resolution to be put forward for the UBCM, as well as this motion for the letter. Because I think there was a bit of not knowing what the motion should look like for the UBCM motion. We didn't include it here, but the letter motion is here as well. So I'll leave it for comment right now. I do think that a motion was suggested, however. Oh, hey, thank you for printing it out. So it is included in an email that has gone out to directors dated August 27th at 9:11 a.m. from Cynthia. Dr. Roberts, go ahead. I'll read it up. Thank you, though. All right, so the motion that we would put forward for the resolution would be that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors endorse the following Coast Guard related resolution and direct staff to submit for consideration at the 2024 UBCM convention as an emergency resolution. And this is the resolution. Therefore, be it resolved that the Union of BC Municipalities call upon the Minister, the Commissioner, and the Canadian Coast Guard management to immediately halt any plans to shut down light stations and maintain the essential levels of staffing at these and all locations on the entire coast of BC, and that this matter be in addition to referred to be referred to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for their immediate consideration. I did have a conversation about the FCM component. They're able to act on these kind of emergent issues right away. We don't need to wait for their meeting in order to move through on it, from what I understand. So that would be the motion with the motion that we would put forward. There would be whereas motions as well, but this is the main meat of the matter. Director Cote?
Thank you. I have been in conversations also with past president of UBCM, Jim Abrams, regarding this issue. And I'm wondering that beyond this, because I do support this going to UBCM, and I also sit on UBCM executive, and totally support this coming forward. It does meet all of the emergency criteria. I'd also like to send beyond UBCM to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities a request from the regional district beyond UBCM. Further, AVICC executive have asked if anybody would like support bringing their issues to ministries. So I think that AVICC could support this. We would just have to ask them. And further to that, I would recommend that we try to make an appointment with the province at UBCM regarding this issue. And AVICC executive could assist with that also. Thank you.
Okay, we can do those as, I think, 2 or 3 separate resolutions after we do the letter and the main motion. Director Roberts, go ahead.
Is it, or should it occur that we should send a copy of this request to our local MP?
I believe so, yes. Our local MP is well informed of what's going on,
Very
as
good,
well
thank
as
you.
whoever the MP is for the Carmona Point area. I can't remember their name, unfortunately. So I think there's a lot of alignment on this already. I think just moving it forward is going to be the thing. The only other question I had, Director Cote, was, is this something that we can include in our letter or some sort of information that can go to AVICC as well officially, or is it already an official thing with them?
It is an official offering from AVICC that if anybody wants support at UBCM, that they would assist us with ministry meetings. I don't know that it really includes resolutions, but as UBCM and past president of AVICC president, I would definitely be standing with the regional district at the mic to support this.
Great, thank you. Okay, would anyone like to move the motion for the resolution? Director Cote, and seconded by Director Roberts, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, this is for the submission of the resolution to UBCM. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried, thank you. And then we also have a motion here for sending a letter to DFO and the Coast Guard. Do we have a motion to move that? Thank you, Director Cote, seconded by Director Coots. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And then, should we do 2 or 3 resolutions, do you think? 3? Okay, do you want to?
Okay, motion to contact AVICC president regarding support at UBCM for resolution and if any ministry appointments are made on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roberts. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Go ahead.
I think that I combined 2 there. So further, I would ask that the regional district send a request to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities from the regional district with our resolution.
And we'll include the letter and everything as well. Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Coots. Any further comments? All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Are there any other comments or resolutions relating to this? Okay, seeing none, let's let Tom back in. Thank you, Janice. Alrighty. Welcome back, Dr. Steer. That brings us to item 7, which is correspondence for information. We have 11 items for information. Would anyone like to pull anything out? Dr. Haggard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is information about the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance Conference that's going to be held in Nanaimo on October 23rd and 24th. I have been fortunate enough to attend this conference several times. It is one of my favorite conferences because it's very relevant for Vancouver Island, and you get a lot of really great information there. I'm not able to go this year because I don't have a dog sitter, but if anybody would like to attend from the board, I would really encourage you to attend.
Great, thank you. And that's item H for Haggard. Is there anything else that anyone would like to move or to pull out? So I have myself attended the VIEA conference several times, mostly as a contributor, like a panelist or a speaker. Every time I've gone, it has been pretty helpful in terms of networking and information. So there is value there. Dr. Cote?
I was going to pull out 7A, Sprout Lake Community Association report. This shows what our community works funds have accomplished within a community. It's a huge benefit to the Sprout Lake area, very well used, and it's growing. You can see by the pictures of all the people there. There's been a number of functions, and maybe one day we could have a meeting there. It won't be able to, there's no Wi-Fi, so won't be able to broadcast there, but it's open for use. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further items to be pulled out? Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Do you want a motion regarding the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance for any directors that would be willing to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion if there's any directors that would be willing to go. I think I went like 10 years ago or something. It was very well done and be a good benefit for directors to attend. Thank you.
I think so. Yeah, that could be a motion to allow directors to go. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Dr. Haggard. So the conference is in Nanaimo, so it's drivable. Okay, seeing no other comments, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We should probably do a motion to receive the correspondence for information as well. Do we have a mover for that? Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
I can comment. I'm expecting to see some correspondence for information coming from the regional district in Nanaimo, basically about their housing densification plans to allow tiny homes and full-time seasonal living in RVs. If that's not coming our way, I would like to put the board on, make a notice of motion to put it on the board's agenda at some point, at some time in the next 6 months, to have a serious discussion about that, to help alleviate the problem of housing in the Alberni Valley and Tofino, Ucluelet, and Banfield. Everyone has the same problem, but we need to have a serious discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boyko. Let's ensure that we have information brought to us at our next equivalent meeting. So not the next meeting in September, but the last meeting in September. That might be enough time to get everything together. Yeah.
I know they're just making a motion to go to the UBCM, but we need to have a talk about that as well, because their motion is in regarding changing the BC building codes to allow that to happen, every time that comes up here, the planning department says we can't do it to the BC building code, so let's modernize this world and change the codes and move forward together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Boyko. I was planning on standing up and supporting that motion when RDN brought it to. However, I don't see anybody being opposed to that, so I think it'll just go through without any conversation. Just because I don't see anybody standing up at the con mic. With that in mind, we'll make sure that we follow up as well and just provide support from our table here. Okay, with that in mind, any further comments on receiving the correspondence for information? I see none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us into item 8. I would note that it's 10-3. Yeah, from there, we'll move to item 8A, which is a request for decision regarding the Cherry Creek Waterworks District Conversion Study. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Thank you. So you may recall that in 2023, at the request of the Cherry Creek Waterworks District, we applied for funding for the restructure planning grant from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and we were successful in that application. This work was to conduct a study for alternate governance options for the district with a potential conversion to service of the ACRD. Connections Planning was hired to do that work, and they have completed the study, which has been made available for your review. This has been presented to the Cherry Creek Waterworks District Board of Trustees, but it has not yet been presented to the community. It is scheduled to be presented on November 6th, and at this time, the Cherry Creek Waterworks District has not made any resolutions regarding the study and have not yet determined the next steps. And we have put in there as an option to have Connections Planning attend a future meeting to present the study.
Thank you. Dr. Roth, go ahead.
Thank you. I would just like to add, I read through the report, very good report, and I wanted to give some background about Beaver Creek, because back in 2012, Beaver Creek was faced with similar issues. We had repeated boil water advisories because of bacteriological contamination in our drinking water. And I think Cherry Creek just went through a boil water advisory due to E. coli contamination. At the time, back in 2012, Island Health advised us that we needed to upgrade our water system and comply with their 4321 water treatment policy. And after taking a look at our options, the people of Beaver Creek decided the best option was to dissolve the improvement district and roll it into the regional district. At the time, the plan included building a filtration plant at the cost of $2.7 million to $4.7 million, with the hope that the federal and provincial government would contribute grant funding to help pay for the new infrastructure. However, that plan did not move forward. Instead, the board of the day decided that Beaver Creek would buy bulk water from the city of Port Alberni. Things have changed since that decision was made. The people of Beaver Creek want better control of their drinking water. They want to reestablish the water intake on the Stamp River, where the regional district continues to maintain a community water license. The people of Beaver Creek would also like to look at potential alternate sources and today's cost of building a filtration plant. As suggested in Cherry Creek's conversion study, Cherry Creek could work with Beaver Creek to create a plan to build a water system that serves both areas and complies with Island Health's 4321 water treatment policy. I'd be pleased to further explore this option as well. At the same time, I don't want the people of Cherry Creek to think that I'm trying to lure them into the regional district. That decision belongs to the people of Cherry Creek only. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Roth. Any further comments, Dr. Sparrow and then Dr. Cote?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I've been looking forward to the study, see where it's going to go. November 6th is the day they're going to have a public meeting, and I look forward to seeing what the public has to say, with all the facts and figures presented before them, what options they have available to themselves. I know the provincial government wants to rid themselves of improvement districts just because there's so many. It's easier to do a regional district, but it'd be up to the people to decide what they'd like to do out there. Whatever they wish to do, I will follow their wishes. So I look forward to them presenting it that time and seeing what the results are. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Cote?
Thank you. Great report. I have been bringing forward to the board for the last couple of years, the request to create a water management committee for the ACRD. This is just one of the water issues that we have. I'm working with the Somas Water fish flow right now regarding water management coming from Sprout Lake and Great Central. Has a lot to do with fisheries, but we are looking at other additional supports that are needed for residential water, etc. So looking at the infrastructure that come from Sprout Lake and Sprout Lake and Great Central Lake, the water going to the Catalyst paper mill. There's a water line that comes from Sprout Lake that could potentially be a water source 25 years from now. As development happens within all our areas, I really think that working together on water management is crucial for our future. It's not today that we need it, but it could happen down the road. And I think that the city of Port Alberni should be working with Beaver Creek, Cherry Creek, and Sprout Lake for a water management plan for our future. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Cote. It seems like that follows or is a way to address some of the concerns that Dr. Roth has brought up for the past probably year and a half, but maybe more. So that's good. Should we receive this report and then maybe add that for discussion at a strategic planning session? Okay, Dr. Sparrow, would you like to receive the report?
Motion. Make the motion that the Alberni Lake Regional District Board of Directors receive the Cherry Creek Waterworks District Conversion Study final report as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roth. And other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And would you like to?
Thank you. I'll make a motion that at our next strategic planning session, the regional district consider adding the water management planning to our strategic plan and consideration of committee.
All right, thank you. Any seconders? Thank you, Director Roberts. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, go ahead, Director Roth. You have to unmute though.
One of the reasons why I'm kind of hesitant is because there's physical land attributes like rivers that go between us that actually might even slow us down if we start looking at this as one big picture. Like for Beaver Creek, it makes more sense to look at our previous system because of the way the Somas River goes into, or sorry, the way the Stamp River goes into the Somas River. I wouldn't mind looking at water management from a perspective of what's going on in the area surrounding the valley as far as, you know, being owned by private managed forest companies. But I don't know that it makes sense to have one water system. I think it makes more sense to have smaller water systems that can be the backup for each other. So that's why I'm hesitant to look at it from, you know, one system approach.
My understanding is that it would just be a place to have conversations about various areas, not necessarily combining all the systems into one. So there would be, you know, topic for Beaver Creek, topic for Sprout Lake, and so on and so forth. I think it's just one place to talk about water. I don't think it's intended at all to unify any kind of water systems beyond what citizens would want for their own areas anyway. Dr. Cote, is that correct?
Yes, that's kind of what I'm looking at or thinking of. The valley is one big watershed. So there could be multiple systems that are included in this, but it's just looking at the future. I really want to leave knowing that we've started that conversation so that we're protected for our water is protected for our future, no matter what system it goes to. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that. So with that in mind, we have a motion that's been seconded. Are there any other comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item B, which is a request for a decision regarding the proposed East Bamfield sewer referendum questions and synopsis. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Thanks. So at the July 24th Board of Directors meeting, the board conducted 3 readings of bylaws E1065 and F1163. And this is for the East Bamfield Sewer Service. The next step is to approve the question and synopsis to be used in the referendum. These were reviewed with the Bamfield Area Services Committee on August 13th. The questions and synopsis have been revised to reflect the recommendations of the committee, and they are included in the agenda. The revised questions and synopsis have been sent to the committee members following the meeting to see if they are in support of the revised question and synopsis. And we received feedback from 2 that they are in support of the changes. I also wanted to note that public engagement will continue in September.
Thank you. With that, Dr. Beckett, did you have any comments?
Other than to thank staff and our committee for all their work in preparing and reviewing the proposed questions. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would make the motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve the East Bamfield Sewer Referendum Synopsis for bylaw E1065 and F1163 as presented, and approve the following referendum question. Are you in favor of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District adopting the following bylaws? 1. East Bamfield Sewer Collection System Service Establishment Bylaw number E1065, which will permit the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District to establish and operate a sewer collection system in East Bamfield. And 2. East Bamfield Sewer Collection System Loan Authorization Bylaw number F1163, which will permit the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District to borrow up to $1.5 million over a period not exceeding 20 years for the purpose of constructing a sewer collection system in East Bamfield.
Thank you. And seconded by, thank you, Dr. Roberts. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those, Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a great idea having this referendum, give the power to the people to make the decision on what they want to do. If it wasn't seconded, I was going to do it, but let's give her.
Thank you, Director Boyko. Just one more check. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, item C is pretty much the same thing, but for West Bamfield. Is that fair, Cynthia? Yeah, I would say that she is nodding. Dr. Beckett, would you like to take it away?
Thank you. And my only comment, because you are absolutely right, it's very, very similar. I'd like to comment on Director Boyko. I absolutely agree. This was a difficult subject matter to bring forward to the community. There was lots of questions. And at the end of the day, to have a referendum really does allow the community to have their perspective known. So with that, I would like to make the following motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve the West Bamfield Sewer Referendum Synopsis for bylaw E1066 and F1164 as presented, and approve the following referendum question. Are you in favor of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District adopting the following bylaws? 1. West Bamfield Sewer Collection System Service Establishment Bylaw number E1066, which will permit the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District to establish and operate a sewer collection system in West Bamfield. And 2. West Bamfield Sewer Collection System Loan Authorization Bylaw number F1164, which will permit the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District to borrow up to $2.4 million over a period not exceeding 20 years for the purpose of constructing a sewer collection system in West Bamfield.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Dr. Boyko, would you like to second this? Yeah, since you missed out the last time.
I'll second, but I also have a quick question. Is the price almost doubled because like the price per property doubled even though the total prices are similar, just because there's a lack of properties on the west side compared to the east side?
Mr. Chair, I can answer that. Well, Terry's there as well. Do you want me to take a stab at this, Terry? My understanding is that the west side would have to have a treatment plant built on that side. Given the topography, that's my understanding. Is that your understanding, Terry?
Go ahead, Terry.
Through the chair, it's just a little bit of a different process this time. We've kind of approached the community and said, how much are you willing to pay for this service? And it's been known that it's $1,500 per parcel per year is kind of the threshold. So what's ended up happening is we've kind of built it in reverse. So there is additional cost to do the east side, but we're going to be looking for grant funding for a good portion of this project in order for it to proceed. I believe off the top of my head, I think it's 90% of the West Banfield project and 80% of the East Banfield project or something. There is a difference of number of parcels on each side as well. So that also impacts it. But a little bit of a slightly different process where we actually are saying how much are you willing to pay and working backwards. So that's why the amounts are different.
Thank you, Director. Oh, all good, Director Bogo. Thank you. Any further comments? Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just sorry, I stepped out for a second. I'm not sure if you discussed it, but I'm just wondering why it's a 20-year limit. Yeah, couldn't it be stretched out to 30, or was that not desirable? Thank you.
That sounds like a Terry question. Terry?
Again, it could have been stretched out. This is really the Jenny and her community services team with Eddie have done a significant amount of engagement in the community, and this is kind of where they have landed. Their comfort level is at $1,500 per year for 20 years. So we could have asked who had it extended to 30, but this was the community's desire, so we've built the bylaw in that manner.
Yeah, and I think asset management planning is based on 20-year periods as well. So you hit the 20-year on the thing, then the asset management plan is also considering what happens after that, I think. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you very much. All right, that brings us to item D, which is the request for a decision regarding the corporate energy and emissions plan. Alex, did you want to add anything to that, given that we had a presentation?
Yeah, so this was the delegation that we heard from Catherine, Peter, and Josie, so I won't go in that much detail. The corporate energy and emissions plan is a project that focused on our operations, providing an overview of the energy consumption, the emissions, and the energy expenditures in the ACRD. Just to reiterate, this was an internal facing review of the ACRD's operations and does not provide broader recommendations for the region. The ACRD has not undertaken a community-wide climate action plan, and staff would seek further direction from the board on funding opportunities prior to doing so. The staff recommend that the board adopt the plan as presented, and that any actions as part of the implementation of the plan be considered as part of the budget process and leveraged through grant funding where appropriate. And if the board would like to get into detail, and I think I heard Director Steer say this earlier, but if you would like to look at the different aspects of the plan implementation, an option would be to refer this to a committee of the whole meeting where we could have a more fulsome discussion. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions or motions? Director Steer, would a committee of the whole conversation going in detail help? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I was looking for my raised hand there. Thank you for that, and thank you, Mike. Alex, the discussion, I think, through the conversation there's a lot of packed detail, and I was just curious around some of the forms of the implementation, but I think it was well laid out there. And in terms of us adopting this plan, doesn't preclude us from having those conversations. And as was pointed out in the report, it will be an annual discussion when it comes time. So I'm comfortable with the motion as presented.
Would you like to move it?
I will. Would you like me to read it out? I got it right here, but I will move the motion as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. So the motion is that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors adopt the corporate energy and emissions plan. That's pretty straightforward. Any further comments? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I've attended quite a few of the climate action, Vancouver Island Coastal Community Climate Action, and they'll be happy to hear that we've adopted this. So thank you.
Great. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, that brings us to item E, which is a request for decision regarding EOC and ESS training services. Karen, I see that you're unmuted and online. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The ACRD received grant funding from the province to support the delivery of comprehensive training sessions and hands-on exercise in the topics of Emergency Operations Center and Emergency Support Services. In July, we opened an RFP seeking to hire a professional consultant to lead and implement this training. We have received 3 submissions for this RFP, and staff are recommending that we contract the contract be awarded to Strategic Alliance for Emergency Resilience. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Would anyone like to move the motion as presented? Dr. Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to make that motion. Would you like me to read it out or?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the Emergency Operations Center and Emergency Support Service Training and Exercise Contract to Strategic Alliance for Emergency Reliance, Inc. for a 1-year term in the amount of $34,759.50, excluding GST, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the contract on behalf of the ACRD.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Haggard. Any further comments? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. So will this include volunteers that will be trained from the community rather than just staff or agencies? Thank you.
Absolutely. So as part of the operations component of the Emergency Operations Center, the operations section, there would be other agencies involved in that, some including volunteers such as search and rescue. And the ESS portion of the training is almost entirely volunteer based. So it will include the ESS team and the volunteers that encompass it.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Brings us to item F regarding the 2024 sewer referendum, alternate methods of advertising. Heather, please go ahead.
Thank you. So the report in front of you is to advise you and have the board adopt the legal advertising plan for the Banfield sewer referendums that are going to occur this fall for East and West Banfield. So under the Local Government Act and Community Charter, we're required to advertise in certain ways. And one of those ways is through a weekly newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks. As Banfield doesn't have a weekly newspaper, we are proposing this advertising plan, which will include legal notices in the Alberni Valley News. And our legal notices will also include posting on our notice board in the lobby as well as our website. In addition to those legally required notices, noting that Banfield, not every resident is going to receive the Alberni Valley News, we will also be printing legal notices in the community on the bulletin board outside the market. We will be utilizing sandwich boards to advertise voting times and locations in both East and West Banfield. We'll be advertising on social media that will also be shared to the Banfield Cork Board on Facebook. And if agreeable from the editor, we'll also use the new Banfield website. Yeah, so this is just to advise the board of the advertising plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Director Boyko, please go ahead. Go ahead,
Does not
Director.
have any way of just mailing a letter to everybody in Banfield? I mean, there's only 200-300 people there. Maybe that would get a lot more attendance and stuff like that. I'm just gonna give you an example. Just hold on a second. I get a notice here about open house of the Beaver Creek Fire Hall. That's mailed out, I assume, by ACRD. That's cheap and easy. We're all talking about social media and sandwich boards. Just mail a letter. And can we do that? That would get a lot more people involved and actually catch the people that live there. Thank you.
So we are sending out a mail out to all of the residents in the service areas next week that will provide additional information about the referendum And it'll also encourage them to check the regional district's website for voting times and locations, because we don't know that at this point until the bylaws adopted by the province, or sorry, approved by the province. But I wouldn't say it's cheap. Mailing is expensive. Printing is expensive, but yes, I just want to acknowledge that we are doing that next week.
Thank you. Any
My
follow-up?
request is just as a follow-up. I can't see mailing out 200 letters be costing more than $2,000, and of the $24 million potential cost for both systems, that's a small potatoes just to get the public involved. Once you know the times, just give everybody all the information to get there. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Director Cote.
Thank you. So mailouts in Sprout Lake are problematic because there's so many numbered companies that are property owners and property owners that don't live in the area. They're all around the world. So mail out, we've done that in the past. I don't really recommend that as a general mail out is pretty good. I just wondering, a thought came to me about, is there a community board, or could the regional district have some kind of a readout board or something that could be put in a small community like Banfield, where everybody would see it? Thanks.
There are a couple of locations. Speaking for Director Beckett, sorry. There's one on the Wind-owned market, and I think there's one in West Banfield as well, but I don't remember where it is. So I think it's just making sure we hit all of the different mediums of information exchange, because I do think in the instance of Banfield, mailouts should be helpful, especially for the residents of Banfield, because it's residents who vote too, not just owners. And I think we just got to make sure we understand that. So with that, Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. I do agree with Director Boyko that mailouts for a community that has a number of seasonal, a fairly large proportion of seasonal homeowners is important. And with that, I would like to make the motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors accept the legal advertising plan for the Banfield sewer referendums in East and West Banfield in the fall of 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Is it referendums or referenda? Doesn't matter. I said mediums instead of media. Okay, and no further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item G, which is Banfield Waste Hauling Services. This is some good news. Please go ahead, Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we are looking to award the waste hauling contract to Nicklin Waste Disposal for 3 years. We recently issued an RFP, and if the board remembers, we have purchased bins. So previously we would rent the bins along with the service to tip the waste in Banfield, and those prices were rising every year that we went out for it. Our current rate is around I think $195 for every tip. So we have purchased bins, and we have reissued an RFP, which has allowed us to receive more bids with more local companies. And the price is now $115 per tip. And when we amortize the cost of the bins to include that, we are still seeing a significant reduction in price for the community as well as the businesses that we partner with. So we are recommending award to Nicklin. If there's other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any further comments? Director Sparrow, go ahead.
Thank you for that. How big are the bins? Are these like household bins, or are these like industrial size dump bins?
For the chair, these are 6-yard front load bins. So when you see the standard commercial bins for cardboard and things around town, it's those are the size of the bins.
Director Beckett and then Director Boyko.
Thank you. Math was not one of my better subjects. Jenny, roughly how much are we saving with this new plan, capital investment aside?
Yeah, I asked for those costs to be analyzed because we're going to be sub-bill to the Marine Science Center and the business group and all of those areas. And so we'll be putting together a mail out for them, and it will be a 60% reduction in price. And that includes the capital repayment plan for the bins. So that's all in with administration. That's a huge savings.
Well, Chair Jack, you're absolutely right. This is fantastic news for our community. Thank you.
That's competition. The moment you have competition, it really changes everything. It's really surprising. Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Jenny, I just had a quick question. Did you say the tipping fees was over $100 or $60 per bin, like what's in the paperwork here? Just want to clarify so everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah, well, we need to make sure that we're doing full cost recovery. So our existing rates right now, and that's not what you're seeing in the report, because that's the new competitive rate. So we do have Waste Management, and their rate in our existing contract is $195. That does include bin rental. So our new rate will be $60 for the contract cost, $5 for amortization cost, and then a $15 administration and maintenance cost. So that adds $20, which is $80. Yeah, sorry, that's $80 a bin per haul. My apologies.
So that
Not
so the
100.
first number that you gave us is not correct then. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, it's $80 per bin per haul is our new rate.
From 190, you said?
195.
Okay, so Director Beckett, I was going to ask you to move this. So if you just make sure that it says $80 per bin per haul instead of 60, I think that's the correct.
My apologies. No, I'm so sorry. That is what we will, those are additional costs. What we will be paying Nicklin is $60 plus administration and other costs, because we do want to make sure that we're recovering the investment on our capital investment.
Apologies. All right, thank you.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I shall proceed then with your blessing that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District ACRD Board of Directors award the Banfield Waste Hauling Services contract to Nicklin Waste Disposal for a 3-year term in the amount of $60 per bin per haul, excluding GST, with the option to renew for an additional 3-year term, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the contract on behalf of the ACRD.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Director Roth, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Let's spend less money. Okay, so with that, I would note that we have quite a few planning matters coming up, and I do need to use the washroom. I'd like to call a recess to 3:30. With my apologies to Mr. Posnikov. I know you're up first, but we'll get to you right away. So if we have a recess for 10 minutes, we'll be back at 3:30. Thanks, everyone.
We tested it last night.
All right, thanks, folks. Looks like we're pretty close here. Oh, it's different on that clock than it is on my phone. We do have a few more minutes, technically. All right, I would remind folks that even if you are from a First Nation or a municipality, you do count for quorum. Well, our electoral area directors do need you for them to make decisions on planning matters. So like, yeah, maybe figure out some sort of exchange, like when somebody gets up and then they come back, then you can get up. Okay. I think we're okay with a quorum. Right now. I think we are, because then there's. I just want to make sure there's as many electoral area directors as needed, so I think the only other one is. Yeah, I think we got them, yep. Yep, okay, we're all good. All right, so we'll start a bit early, it's about a full minute early. On item 9.1A, which is DVA 24002, Bosnikov. So Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. This is a development variance application for lot 67 on Haggard Cove. You heard a delegation from the property owner earlier today. As you heard, the variance would allow the owner to construct a vacation home on an existing plateau on the property about 19 feet from the front lot line, rather than the 25 feet that's required in the zone. The board had first considered this on May 8th, after which public input was received during the notification process. There were letters of opposition. As you heard, these were received at the June 12th meeting. The board had deferred a decision at that time to allow the additional neighborhood engagement to take place. As the applicant has outlined, over the summer, he hosted the 2 meetings with the property owners. Planning staff did participate in one as well and helped answer questions about the process and the application, and has had a number of individual conversations with neighbors that are most impacted. Since that time, one of the delegations that spoke at the previous board meeting reached out to myself. He spoke on behalf of 3 other families at that meeting, and they had expressed initial opposition. After speaking with the applicant, they now support the application, and others have phoned us and emailed us to express support as well. So considering this additional public dialogue that took place on the application over the summer and the rationale that's highlighted in the report, staff recommend that the board issue the development variance at this time, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Beckett, did you want to take it from here?
Yes, I'd like to thank, staff, residents, and Greg, as I mentioned earlier, for their efforts to resolve this matter. And with that, I would like to move the motion that the board of directors issued development variance permit DVA 24002.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in, oh, sorry, Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Just want to say, I want to thank the applicant for going out and talking to the neighbors and getting things resolved. It's always good to be good neighbors, and at an initial point where it was going to block a view and upset a lot of neighbors, I know that was upsetting to a lot of people, and hopefully you have it all resolved and can move forward together. So thanks for taking the time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And with that, seeing no further comment, all those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, thank you for sticking around, Greg. Please feel free to stick around to the end if you like, but yeah, thank you. All right, that brings us to item B, which is a temporary use permit. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is a temporary use permit application for the short-term rental of a small one-bedroom accessory dwelling unit located on the same property as the primary residence of the property at 8262 Meshers Road in Beaufort area. The Beaufort APC considered this application at their August 12th meeting, where they supported the application as presented. Staff recommend that the board proceed with the TUP and consider public input on this application. Thank you.
Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a motion that the board of directors consider temporary use permit application TUP 24006, subject to neighborhood notification as per Local Government Act, Section 494.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Roth. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. That brings us to item C. Sprout Lake item is a development for variance permit. Go ahead, Alex.
Yes, thank you. This development variance relates to a property at 10411 Marina Vista Drive in the Sprout Lake area. It's to allow for the siting of a single family dwelling on the vacant lot. The proposed house includes an attached deck on the front that would extend 3 meters or about 10 feet into the front yard setback. Neighbor notification was sent on August 9th following the July meeting, and no public correspondence has been received. The variance would allow for a house that appears to generally fit within the character of the neighborhood, and planning staff recommend that the board issue the variance. Thank you.
Dr. Cote?
Thank you. The APC, Sprout Lake APC did look at this application and are supportive. So at this time, I'd move that the Board of Directors issue development variance permit DVD 24005.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. That brings us to item D, a rezoning application for Sprout Lake. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. This is a rezoning application for the property at 10787 Kamola Road. The Sprout Lake APC did consider this application at their last meeting in August, where they supported the application as presented. The rezoning application would allow for a 3-lot subdivision of the property with a 0.8 hectare minimum lot size. If the application proceeds, there would be a public hearing in this case, as there is an OCP amendment that is required. And the recommended motions are available for you, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director Cote?
Thank you. This also was supported by Sprout Lake APC, so I'd move that bylaw P1509 Sprout Lake Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw be read a first time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Please continue.
I'd move that bylaw P1510 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a first time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roberts. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. And please continue.
I move that the public hearing for bylaws P1509 and P1510 be delegated to the director for the electoral area D, the alternate director, or the chairperson of the regional district.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. And Leslie?
Maybe staff could mention why there's a public hearing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, happy to reiterate that. So the land use designation on this property is rural use, which requires a 2 hectare minimum lot size. In that designation, what the applicant has applied for is a minimum lot size that's smaller than that. The A1 zone allows for a 0.8 hectare minimum lot size. So that facilitates the OCP amendment that's required. And with the new legislation from the province, wherever there's an OCP amendment, there is a requirement for a public hearing, even if that has to do with housing. So that would be the reasoning for holding the public hearing in this case.
Please continue, Director Cote.
Thank you. I'd move that the Board of Directors confirm that adoption of bylaws P1509 and P1510 are subject to A, confirmation from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner that the parcel can accommodate on-site sewage disposal to a 0.8 hectare minimum lot size, and B, meeting all technical referral agency requirements.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Nope. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, looks like another one for Sprout Lake, a temporary use permit. Go ahead, Alex. Oh, before we start, Dr. Minions needs to be kicked out, and she was. Janice, your fastest gun in the West. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This is an application to renew a temporary use permit for the short-term rental of a small cabin located on the property on which the applicants reside. The board had considered this application on July 24th, where they directed that the TUP proceeds subject to the public notification process. Notice was sent to neighboring property owners 100 meters and also advertised in the newspaper, and no correspondence was received in this case. The rental has operated without any neighborhood concerns that we are aware of, and staff recommend at this time that the board issue the temporary use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. So happy to see people actually applying for these. So, and it's a renewal. So I move that the board of directors issue temporary use permit TUP 19018R.
Thank you. Seconded by Dr. Sparrow. Thank you. Comment from Dr. Boyko. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, I'm all for people renewing the temporary use permit. So this one expired a year ago, but the place has been operating since then without any ramifications. What will happen to properties where their temporary use permit expires and they keep operating? This is just a general question, but it's specific to this one in 3 years from now. Just want to ask staff what will happen then, and then I have a follow-up after that.
Sure. So the we've talked about this in the past, but the way the temporary use permits work right now in the legislation is they can be issued for a period of up to 3 years, and that same permit can be renewed for an additional period of 3 years. It's my current understanding that at the termination of that renewal period, a property owner can apply for another TUP with a differing use or a differing condition of use. Can apply to rezone the property in a permanent manner, or return the uses to those that are permitted under the current zoning. So if a permit were to expire, the applicants weren't interested in renewing or hadn't applied again and continued the use, the ACRD would have the option to proceed with enforcement action on that through our bylaw enforcement policy. In the past, I do acknowledge that the regional district did not have a consistent system in notifying TUP holders that their permits were expiring. We have a better process in place now, and staff have notified all of the applications that are coming up to their renewal, and we also have the STR TUP tracker on the website, and that's regularly updated as well. That allows people to know when their applications are expiring. Hopefully that gives a bit more background.
So follow up, Dr. Boyko, then we'll go to Director Roberts.
So just follow up, and then I got a second question. So with the monitoring that the ACRD is doing, the automatic monitoring of Airbnb style rentals for the various websites, are we automatically detecting when things are in use and they don't have a permit in place, or are we enforcing that or not enforcing that?
So so over the past 2 summers, I would say we are continuing to enforce on a complaint basis. When the board adopted the STR TUP policy, there was some direction to actively go out and seek these rentals and send letters and engage with the property owners and seek their interest in applying to get the TUP or to cease the use. Since then, over the past couple seasons, I would say we have been dealing with them on a complaint basis, and there have been a number of letters that have been sent on a case by case.
Perfect, thank you. Final question. It seems this property has 2 different docks on it, and one seems to be advertised as commercial use as a private dock for the Airbnb guests. Is that allowed at any lakes in British Columbia, or is it just one per property for residential use only?
Through the chair, thank you. The ACRD zoning bylaw does not have any regulations in place that would limit the number of docks that a property could have. I do know that the provincial regulations do apply. I don't know if they have a limitation to the number of docks, or if they would not approve something like this in this situation. But that would be up to the province to enforce. The only regulations that the ACRD has in place for docks at this point would be the development permit requirements for constructing and placing a new dock. If it were a commercial use like a marina, for example, it would require the marina zoning that we have in other places around the lake at the fishing dock and at the old Pleacoop Marina. But in this case, if it's for private use, there would be no regulations.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Roberts?
To the chair, to Alex, it seems to me that when a property owner could apply for a TUP was good for 3 years, then at the end of that, they could apply for a second 3-year term. And at the end of that second 3-year term, they could apply for a variance. Is that not allowed anymore?
The chair, they could apply to rezone the property. So in a permanent manner, they could a zoning amendment could allow for short-term rental use or a commercial use, for example. The province has not provided any additional tools for managing STRs beyond the regulations that were adopted last year, some of which apply to the ACRD, but most of which do not apply to the ACRD electoral areas. So the board had adopted the policy to consider STR applications by TUP back in 2017, and it may be worthwhile to revisit the criteria in which the STR applications are considered and how best to manage these uses in the future if we don't have any additional tools beyond what the province provides with the temporary use permit.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. What you just explained about enforcement or looking into temporary use permit for this reason, could you please refresh my memory as to through our budget process, we hired somebody for like a half-time position that was going to be working on this. So it doesn't sound like that's what's happening at this time. So just like to have some confirmation as to what's happening with through that budget process. Thank you.
So when the policy was developed, that was developed by staff in consultation with the public and the board at the time. Stemming from that, there was direction for bylaw enforcement to proactively look for these types of uses, which would be a change in how we typically deal with the enforcement process. The board has now adopted the bylaw enforcement policy as well, which lays out the expectations of the bylaw enforcement process, I guess, as its main principle being that it's complaint based. If there's additional direction that the board wishes to give staff in how we manage these types of uses in the region, we're happy to hear that. The other thing that I would highlight is that the ACRD also has the ability to ticket for uses that are in contravention of the zoning bylaws. We do have the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw. It allows us to send out notices of contravention where somebody would be operating an Airbnb in contravention to residential zoning. That's another tool we have.
Thank you. In my opinion, that seems to be a change in what was adopted when we did include that extra person, half-time person for bylaws enforcement. So when a change like this comes forward, that is changing the purpose of that employee, it would be very good if the board is made aware of that change, because I was under the assumption that we still had a half-time person working on that. So change. Thanks.
Daniel?
Well, maybe we can just come back with, maybe I'm just not clear on the question, but our position on half is still a position on half being used for the same purposes of bylaw education enforcement. It's just where their attention goes, like, because we're complaint based, at the end of the day, where staff resources go is in accordance to the workflow that they have. Complaint matters rise to the top, obviously, and have to be addressed. But most of these complaint matters aren't simple or aren't light on workload. In most cases, we're still seeking voluntary compliance, which means a lot of dialogue with neighbors, a lot of dialogue with individuals involved, and explaining and getting people to agree to do what they should be doing under the bylaw. Where that fails, then we go down other routes, and that too is labor intensive. And so, if anything, I'd say we're light on staff in terms of the volume of work, and that's without going out and proactively seeking. We're just simply responding or trying to respond to the complaints that come across our table. The tools that we've created around planning are extremely effective tools as well, in that they promote transparency and understanding, so people know when they have variance permits, when they have TUPs, when they have various things. But what also occurs with that is that now that people have a better understanding, they go like, oh, I thought my neighbor had a temporary use permit for a short-term rental. Turns out they don't. They call up and say, I'd like to make a complaint. And so so that didn't necessarily lessen the workload. In fact, it's increased it just in terms of the amount of phone calls. These phone calls don't always turn into bona fide complaints. They don't always turn into action, but they still have to be managed and processed by the staff that are there.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I'm sure that there's endless amount of work for our staff. It's just that there was a budget case that came before the regional district that we approved, and that was for that half-time position. So I don't want to add any more work for staff to have to bring a report forward, but I think that this is quite serious when we adopt a budget with to support a case for employment that I don't think is being followed at this point. So thank you.
And I think my point is, I think it is being followed, but I'll verify, because this is important if it's not. When we make a case and the board approves it, we ought to be, and to my understanding, we are following it. If that's not the case, we'll correct it.
Okay, well, thank you for that conversation on an important tangent, but a tangent nonetheless. I would reiterate that the Board of Directors issue temporary use permit TUP 19018R has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further comments on that item? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Now that we don't have a motion on the floor, any further follow-up? No? Okay, we'll make sure that that gets onto an agenda though. Okay. Item F is another TUP for Sprout Lake. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you so much. This is another application to renew a temporary use permit for the short-term rental of a two-bedroom single-family dwelling. This one located on the Dixon Drive area of Sprout Lake. Neighbor notification process has been completed and no public correspondence was received. And staff are not aware of any neighborhood concerns over the course of this TUP. The permit would be renewed for an additional 3-year term, and staff recommend that the board issue the TUP renewal at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I would move that Board of Directors issue temporary use permit TUP 19020R. Thank you.
Thank you. Any seconders? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Item G is an item for Beaver Creek. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is a development variance application to allow for the construction of an accessory dwelling unit on the property at 5424 Gordon Avenue. The variance permit would allow for an increase in the ADU building height from 12 feet to 19 feet to allow for a consistent roof line for the proposed detached ADU to match the existing house. The neighbor notification process was completed in this case and no public correspondence was received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ross, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll move that the Board of Directors issue development variance permit DVE 24006.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is item H. Quite a few motions. Beaver Creek. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. This is the rezoning application for the property that we heard the delegation earlier today. The applicants intend to rezone the parcel to cottage residential RC1 district to allow for the addition of up to 4 cottages being 500 square feet on the main floor to be operated as short-term rentals. The board first considered this application in March, where the public input process was initiated. Following the public notification, as you heard earlier today, the board did receive 5 letters from neighboring property owners that opposed the development. At the May 8th meeting, the board passed a resolution to defer a decision on the bylaws to allow staff to work with the applicants on next steps to consider addressing some of those concerns that were raised by the neighbors. The delegation outlined what those steps were, and they're included in the package here for you. They've submitted the updated site plan, demonstrates the siting of the 4 cottages in the existing house can be in compliance with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. They've submitted an assessment from wastewater professional confirming that on-site sewage disposal can be accommodated to meet the island health regulations. And they've also retained a professional engineer to address stormwater retention and site drainage as part of the development. So the information is in the package for you. It is recommended that if the board proceeds with considering the development, that the applicant agree to a covenant registered on the property that would ensure that the engineered stormwater detention and drainage system would be installed as part of any cottage development. Given that additional information received and the additional recommended condition of approval, staff do recommend that the board proceed with 3 readings of the bylaw. Alternative options mentioned as well include the consideration for directing staff to seek additional input on the application prior to making a decision on the bylaw. I will note that the delegate did provide his phone number to the neighbors, and I guess nobody reached out. But with the additional information that we have, if the board wishes to do so, we could always reach out to the neighbors again and seek additional input before you make a decision. Happy to answer any questions.
Any further comments or questions? Director Ross, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to note that Clark Power noted in his presentation that there's ample time to make a decision about this rezoning application. And due to the number of neighbors that voiced opposition and the changes that have been made to the original plan, I'd like to move that the board direct staff to seek additional public input on the application prior to the board considering making a decision on rezoning application RE 23011 and zoning atlas amendment bylaw P1494.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Boyko.
I can comment as well.
Please go ahead.
I want to thank the applicant for coming in and discussing the plans and correcting the square footage and making sure everyone's aware of the calculations and how the 500 square feet is calculated, things like that. Talking about parking, and then one of the neighborhood concerns, as well as the water drainage, which was noted by several of the 4 letters that came in. There's 4 letters that came in from the public. 2 are direct neighbors and 2 are right beside the direct neighbors. And they have a lot of very valid concerns that are still up there. Like the neighbor right next door would be, their house is within 10 feet of the road going to the back that would have all the extra traffic going by. So I think we need to work on addressing the other neighborhood concerns to ensure that this is going to be welcomed by the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. I wonder if I should write that down. So does that preclude any of the other ones? No, we don't need to do the other. Okay, yeah. Okay, so does that bring us to item I then? Director Boyko, your hand is up again? Oh, yeah, go ahead. No, okay. All right.
I have a conflict in the next one.
Yes, yeah, nice.
Okay.
So we'll have you, we'll remove you. Dr. Boyko, go ahead. Oh,
I'll do our thing for the next.
Okay. Go ahead, Alex, for the introduction.
Thank you. This is a rezoning application that would facilitate a 3-lot subdivision of the 0.9 hectare property at 6467 Walker Road. The proposed Bearland Strata subdivision would provide a separate lot for each of the 2 homes that are on the property, and an additional vacant lot for family. The application to rezone the property to RA3 district is consistent with the policies of the Beaver Creek OCP, and a public hearing was not held. The neighbor notification and public advertising process provided the opportunity to gather public input. During that process, we did not receive any correspondence from the neighbors, and at this time, staff recommend that the board proceed with 3 readings of the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alex. I'll make a motion that bylaw P1493 Regional District of Alberta Claycoat Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a first time.
We have a seconder. Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Please continue.
Make a motion that bylaw P1493 Regional District of Alberta Claycoat Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a second time.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. And finally,
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a motion that bylaw P1493 Regional District of Alberta Claycoat Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a third time.
okay, seconded by Director Sparrow. No comments. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. I'm going to let Dr. Roth back in. And that brings us to item J, which is another Beaver Creek item. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. This is another rezoning application for the Beaver Creek area for a 0.8 hectare lot at 6416 Beaver Creek Road. The applicants intend to do a 2-lot subdivision of the property and build a new single-family dwelling at the rear of the lot where the vacant lot would be created. The application was supported by the Beaver Creek APC at their meeting on August 20th. The rezoning is consistent again with the residential use policies in the Beaver Creek OCP, so no public hearing would be held in this case. If the board proceeds with considering the bylaws, there would be the neighbor notification process that would allow the neighbors to have a say in this application. This time, staff recommend that the board proceed with considering bylaw P1511 at a future date, subject to the public input process, the technical agency review, and confirmation that sewage disposal can be accommodated. I'm happy to answer questions.
Director Roth, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to move that the Board of Directors consider first reading of bylaw P1511, Regional District of Alberni-Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw at a future date, and that notice be given in accordance with Section 467 of the Local Government Act. That the Board of Directors confirm that adoption of bylaw P1511 is subject to A, confirming from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner that the portion of the property to be rezoned is capable of supporting on-site sewage disposal to a minimum of 0.24 hectare density, and B, meeting all technical referral agency requirements.
Thanks. Can we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Heather, is it okay if we just treat that all as one motion since it was read out at one? Yeah, and that, great. Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried, thank you. Okay, that brings us to item K, a Cherry Creek item. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. Flying through the region into Cherry Creek now. This application is a development variance that would reduce the watercourse setback from 30 meters to 15 meters to allow for the siting of a new house on the property. The variance would allow for the optimal siting on the house, considering the topography and watercourses that dissect the 3.8 hectare property. No development would be planned within the riparian area in this case. At the last meeting in July, the board resolved to proceed with the neighbor notification process. That has been completed and no correspondence was received. And at this time, staff recommend that the board issue development variance DVF 24007. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sparrow?
Well, thank you for that. I'd like to make a motion that the board of directors issue development permit variance DVF 24007.
Thank you. To the seconder. Thank you, Dr. Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? The motion carried. Great. And lastly, item L. Another Cherry Creek item. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This is another similar development variance application that would reduce the watercourse setback from 30 meters to 25 meters on another property on Cypress Boulevard. And this would allow for the construction of a pool shed adjacent to a new pool that's under construction on the east side of the house. The reduction of the watercourse to 25 meters would align with the OCP requirements, and no development is planned within the 15-meter riparian area of the minor stream. At the July meeting, again, the board resolved to proceed with the public input process. No notification or no correspondence was received in that case, and staff recommended the board issue the variance. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to move a motion that the board of directors issue development variance permit DVF 24009.
Seconded by Director Roberts. Thank you. Any further comments? Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think that we looked at this earlier and I had a question around the pool and setbacks from the creek, and I believe there was no setbacks. Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct. The 30-meter setback that we have in the zoning bylaw is specific to buildings, and the pool did not require that. The pool does require a building permit, so the applicants have obtained the required permits to install the pool, and that allows us to look at the fencing requirements and meeting the engineering standards that are needed for many of the in-ground pools. So, but no setback needed.
All right, thank you. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, great. We're through that. That brings us into item 10.1, staff reports. We have the meeting schedule for September and the building report. Anyone like to pull anything out or just move to receive? Thank you. Move to receive by Director Cote. Do we have seconder? Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to area reports, item 10.2. So we'll go through in order. Area A, Banfield, Director Beckett.
Thank you. An amazing season so far here, other than, of course, the weather that we've had recently. The only negative thing is, and it's no surprise, it's an annual situation, parking. Parking in the core has made traveling, I think, somewhat dangerous, especially on the Banfield Road, as people are, parking well onto the road right away. But other than that, lots happening. Minister Osborne is in town today visiting with residents at Anakla, and then tomorrow with residents of Banfield. Nice to have her in town to discuss issues that she and her staff may be able to assist us with. And that's my report, sir.
Thank you. Next up is item B, or electoral area B, Beaufort. Dr. Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. Harvest has started. I'm personally putting out tons of apples and pears. If anybody needs any, come on by. That being said, everything is going good in Beaufort. People are always concerned about the tax raises and things like that. We have our next town hall September 29th, 2 p.m. Everyone's always invited, as always. And we look forward to further engagement with the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Item or area C, Dr. Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have too much to report from Director Siga, but there was some concerns about speed on forestry roads and actually getting out into Salmon Beach as well and towards Makoa. They'll be addressed for the residents at Salmon Beach this Sunday when I'm in attendance. And the other option is to bring in our local RCMP and or conservation officers to ensure that that drivers of ATVs and so on in the back roads are licensed and insured. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Item or electoral area D, Sprout Lake, Director Cote.
Thank you. The Sprout Lake Community Association has struck an environmental committee of which we're working on, and inviting MLA Osborne to come and address the environmental committee and work with us. how she can. And this week earlier, I had a road tour with Ministry of Transportation and had comments with Main Road. Most of our roads are quite well maintained compared to past years. It has been a easy year as far as snow removal and rain and fire, etc. So quite a bit has been done as far as patchwork, but there is a few key roads that are absolutely terrible for traveling on. One of which is mine, which I'm hoping one day we'll have some work done. They did mention Beaver Creek as an area, Lugren Road and another road that was going to be paved, patchwork. So I did also mention that the road to Banfield is absolutely wonderful. I have traveled it. It's better than the road to Whistler. So that's my report. Thanks.
That's pretty cool. Area E, Beaver Creek, Director Roth.
Yes, all is well in Beaver Creek. I'll be at the town hall meeting on September 29th, ready to listen to the people. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Area F, Cherry Creek, Director Sparrow.
Thank you for that. Nothing really happening on Cherry Creek right now. Of course, the big thing will be November 6th when they have their meeting regarding the water conversion plan and what they're going to do with referendum or not. So my main focus will be pushing that towards the people I know that is available and they should meet, because it's going to be a generational decision. So other than that, we're pretty quiet over there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. City of Port Alberni, Director Minions or Director Haggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Director Minions. Please go ahead.
I was just going to sneak in before Director Haggard could, because she always has such well-prepared updates. And I just wanted to celebrate that the Key to Key path is just about complete, which is really exciting for our community. A multimodal path from Victoria Key to Harbor Key. We are just working on the final sections along the SOMAS and then connecting kind of the Stamp Ave area to the SOMAS lands. It should be complete in the next, I think, 2 weeks. And then we're looking forward to hosting a celebration. We've had just a ton of activity on it already, and it's not even connected. So we are very excited and love hearing all the positive feedback from the community that we've been getting since it's seen significant completion. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
You took
Director
the
Haggard.
words right out of my mouth, Director Minions.
Okay, so Director Sparrow, go ahead.
Can I ask a question about the city? You put a crosswalk across Roger Creek. Is there going to be flashing lights there? Okay, I haven't seen them in yet, but I've seen the crosswalk on it. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add that there are flashing pedestrian lights going in there, as well as some bollards to sort of warn cyclists who are on the path of the road upcoming, and additional signage as well. Thanks.
That's great. That's great to hear, especially seeing that there was some lights that went in for some crosswalks on, I think, Redford, and they seem to really help as well. Okay, that brings us to item H, District of Tofino. Director Steer.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Yeah, it's been busy in Tofino, of course, this summer, but the big news is we cut the toilet paper for our brand new wastewater treatment plant. It was a huge celebration. Every politician, I think, on the planet was there. It was really well attended. I think it's, once again, one of those generational projects that happen in our community. So well celebrated and well needed. And I think it's a big boost for the District of Tofino and our surrounding communities and environment.
Great, thank you. District of Ucluelet, Dr. McEwen.
Thank you. We have undertaken a huge Peninsula Road Safety and Revitalization project that's been going on since February, and it's almost complete. The construction part is complete. The only piece that needs to be still done is the planting of the trees. But it's made a huge difference as you drive into Ucluelet. It's beautiful, and the Ministry of Transportation contributed to quite a bit of money for paving as well. So it's all freshly paved, new lines, new four-way stop, a bike path that didn't exist before. And so I think any of you that come make your way to Ucluelet. You'll be really pleasantly surprised as you drive into town.
That's great to hear. Last time I was in Ucluelet, I stopped at the taco stand right at the very beginning of the community because of the backup a little bit. I'm a little pressed for time, but I got to discover some great tacos, and I look forward to being there another time. Okay, that brings us into the HUIT update. So I think I'll just report on two things. First of which is that the HUIT framework plan, which is our plan for using our private lands in Banfield, as well as an update to our land use plan and zoning and so on and so forth, the equivalent of an LCP in our own treaty lands as well. That continues on, and we've presented, I think we're up to 7 separate meetings now with either Banfield residents. I think we've done that twice, one online and one in person, as well as several ones with residents in Anakla and beyond. So we're talking about Port Alberni 2 times now, Victoria, Vancouver, as well as a couple of online meetings. We're going to continue those engagement plans, making sure that we engage with as many people as possible, both HUIT citizens, Anakla residents, and Banfield residents. We want to make sure that we're navigating this correctly and making sure everything lines up in accordance with what is going on between what HUIT wants to do and what the ACRD is doing with Banfield. So it's making sure we keep that information all in one place and making sure that we do right by our neighbors. And then second of which is that in the first week of September, and I believe it's Friday, we'll be celebrating the grand opening, although I don't think it's coming online quite yet, of the Umixu Mother Center. So I believe that's the Friday. So I think that's the 5th, I think. And so I think there's some invitations that have gone out, but we definitely want to see folks from the SCRD. If you have time to come out, please do. And we've appreciated working with the city on making sure this is all being done in a good way in the province and so on and so forth. So it's pretty important for our strategic plan on HUIT's side to have this facility open, because helping young mothers and families is going to do quite a bit to address a lot of not only the socioeconomic inequities between Indigenous folks and non-Indigenous folks, but also address a lot of the recommendations that were put in our social services report, I think of almost 6 or 7 years ago now. And so with progress being made in this way, we're hoping to be a good example of what's possible and following in the footsteps of giants like Sagehaven and so on and so forth. So with that, I'll leave it at that. I would note that item K is Tokwat. Kristen couldn't make it and neither could her alternate. So
Excuse me, Chair Jeff, do you have times for the grand opening?
I did, and I have completely forgotten them. So I will forward them as soon as I can.
Friday is the 6th.
6th, thank you. And then the next item is the Chucklasset Tribe Government. Mariah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Rather short report. Whole Chucklasset's executive departments are on holidays for this past month, so we have all been enjoying going out and harvesting, spending time with families, so on and so forth. It's kind of been a difficult time for Chucklasset. We've had a lot of loss. There's been a lot of youth who've just been having a hard time, and so we've all been trying to spend as much time together as we can, always reminding and focusing on the programs that we offer for mental health and those varying different circumstances that people may be going through. So I would just like to echo voices of support for all those kind of programs that we do, and I think it's a wonderful opportunities and options that we have the capabilities to perform these things. And I would just like to also voice the reminder that the of the get together at the end of the month for that is being put on by me and my pages are all over the place. Reward Within Society is at the end of the month at Dry Creek Park for the toxic drug crises and things like that. So if anyone is able to come and participate, that would be fantastic. I hope to see people there. And yeah, we're looking forward to coming back in full swing. We're doing a lot of community engagements in regards to climate action committees. That seems to be a really, really chewable discussion that our people really enjoy. And we're looking forward to working on more things together. Thank you, Chew.
Great, thank you for the update. That brings us lastly to the Ucluelet First Nation or government. Lavana, please go ahead. Director Mastrangelo.
Good afternoon. Updates for Yuklot First Nation is we are going to be having our annual General Assembly coming this September, and we are still on the lookout for a Director of Operations and a CFO. And yeah, we'll have another posting going out this next coming month, so keep a lookout for that. And if you know any candidates, that would be really great, just to send them to our way. Thank you.
Aw. All right, Dr. Cote?
Thank you. I'd just like to send congratulations to your new addition. Welcome to the ACRD family. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Oh, could we have a motion to receive the reports, please? Thank you, everyone. Director Cote and Sparrow. All those in favor? And motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to member reports. These are for the organizations we're part of. 911 Corporation, Director Beckett.
Report next meeting is September 27th.
Great, thank you. Vancouver Island Regional Library, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Our next meeting is Saturday, September the 14th, right before UBCM.
Great. Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, Dr. Minions. I think she left. Dr. Hegg. Okay, no report. Item D, Air Quality Council, Dr. Sparrow.
No, no report at this time. Thank you.
AVICC, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. So just a reminder of the AVICC support at UBCM for resolutions and hopefully meeting with either Premier Eby or some of the ministry regarding the Canadian coastal lighthouse issue. The AVICC lunch is on Wednesday. I don't know which day that is. If there's any suggestions for advocacy, kindly speak to myself or other AVICC executive or email Teresa Dennison because we'd like to do lunch and learns and we need suggestions. We have a list, but if you have anything that's coming up, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So Walken, Public Advisory Group. Go ahead, Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. No report at this time. Yep.
Thank you. Any other reports? Seeing none, can we have a motion to receive the reports? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Seconded by Director Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to unfinished business, of which there's none. Late business, of which there's none. Question period. Does anyone have any comments or questions in the gallery? Judy? No? All right. Anything online?
There's no emails, and I'm just gonna look in Zoom. There is one comment in Zoom, so I'll read that out. From Charlene Lack. Most of the ACRD board okayed the placement of a 5G tower in the Beaver Creek area on DeBell Road because Health Canada broadcasted that 5G towers were safe. However, I have not been able to find any Health Canada studies on 5G non-detrimental health. I've only found studies which state the 5G EMF emissions cause cancer to especially young children with increased leukemia. My question is, can you supply the taxpayers with the Health Canada studies that show no ill effects from 5G towers? I had to depart, but will pursue your response when I can later. Thank you.
I'd like to thank her for her comment, but I don't think that's our bailiwick. That can be a direct reference to Health Canada, I believe. Okay, so with that, I think the next step is to recess the meeting to go into the hospital district meeting. Could we have a motion to do so? Thank you, Dr. Roberts, seconded by Dr. Cote. Thank you. I know we're running out of steam. We're in the home stretch, guys. Hey, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not anything from the internet.
No. I know that.
As you know.
I know that.
I'd like to call the Hospital District Board of Directors meeting to order. First, I'd like to do the recognition of territories. I would like to acknowledge that we're conducting this meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Shoshaw and Huipachesset First Nations, and we're grateful for the opportunity to do so. We also have directors calling in from other territories, and I'd like to also acknowledge those nations and express our gratitude and our respect. And notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website. We have an agenda in front of us. Is there any late items from directors? Seeing none, is there any late items from our corporate officer? Are we going to do the in camera now?
And then going to.
Okay, so we do have an in-camera agenda and I'd like to add. Okay, thank you. Second by Director Jack, all in favor of the agenda as amended? Director Boyko?
Was this secondary in-camera late item actually passed out to board members? Because I don't know if I've seen it yet.
Heather says not yet. We just received it just before we started our meeting.
Are we going to get a look at it before we talk about it?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Is there any declarations or conflict of interest? Oh. Director Roth?
I just needed to note that I have to leave the meeting. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the agenda as presented? Any opposed? Motion carried. Any declarations or conflict of interest? Seeing none, we have minutes from the Board of Directors meeting on July 24th, 2024. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I motion the minutes the Alberni-Quicot Regional Hospital District Board of Directors held on July 24th, 2024 be adopted? Moved by Director Sparrow, second by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We have correspondence for information. We have a news release from Island Health celebrating the new 3D mammography technology, which enhances breast cancer detection in Port Alberni. And I was wondering if the ACRD board could send a letter of thanks to Island Health for this great addition to our community. Thank you. Could I get a motion that this correspondence be received for information? Moved by Director Cote, second by Director Roberts. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Reports, Banfield Health Center Director Beckett.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Alberni-Quicot Continuing Care Society Director Roberts.
No report.
Tofino General Hospital Director Steer.
No report today.
Alberni-Quicot Health Network Director Cote.
No report at this time.
And West Coast General Hospital, and I have no report as well. Could I get a motion that the Regional Hospital Board of Directors receive reports A through G? I thought I said you. West Coast Native Healthcare Society, sorry, Director.
No, no report at this time, thanks.
Okay. Can I motion that the Regional Hospital Board of Directors receive reports A through G? Moved by Director Sparrow, second by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. I'm trying to go fast. No unfinished business, no late business. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, could get a motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Roberts, second by Director Sparrow. Oh.
We can adjourn, or is there a new agenda? Or is it the same?
Yeah, we need to read the reasons to go in camera so we could recess this meeting.
Yeah, so because we have to read out the. Is it all right? Okay, so we have to go we have an in-camera item for the hospital district, but then we also have an in-camera agenda for the main board meeting. So what I would suggest we do is we read out the reason for going in camera for the hospital district. And then we also read out the reasons for going in camera for the board. Because once we go in camera for the hospital district, it's very likely that we're just gonna stay in camera throughout the entirety of that. So technically speaking, we should move the going in camera for the hospital district, then immediately recess the meeting so that we go back to the main board so that I can read out the reasons to go in camera for the hospital, or for the regular board. And then we recess back to the hospital district. Or I could just read those two things out and pretend we did that. It's from a technical perspective, we have to do the recesses so that people can hear why we're going in camera. So can I just
You
read
do
those out?
whatever's the easiest
Okay,
and quickest.
All right, so it's convoluted, but this is what we'll do. So we'll be going in camera for the hospital district meeting because it's about a kind of indirect labor issue about personnel of a group we're technically a part of, I think, or something like that. So that would be under the community charter under 91J, as well as the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act under 21(1)(a)(2). So those would be the two references for going in camera for the hospital district, and I will move that we do that.
I'm very confused right now. Okay, moved by Director Jack, second by Director Cote. Director Boyko.
Can we still get the data on why we're going in camera before we go in camera? Or is that not gonna happen with this item?
Yeah,
It's
I
been
sent the
out.
email about a minute ago. You should have it.
Not yet, but thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, now I'd like to move to recess this meeting.
I'll second that. All in recess? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're back at the regular board meeting, and the reason why we're doing this is so that people who may be watching online can see why we'll be going in camera for the board meeting eventually. So the motion is as stated, the motion to close, and this is to close the board meeting, not the hospital district meeting. Motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under sections 91J, information that is prohibited, or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection and Privacy Act. And second, 92A1, in case of a meeting that must be closed under section 92, if the board considers this necessary and the person already has knowledge of confidential information. And then also 3 is 21(1)(a)(2), from the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The head of a body must refuse to disclose an applicant information A that would reveal to commercial, financial, labor relations, scientific, or technical information of or about a third party. So those are the reasons why we'd be going in camera. So that's moved for the main board agenda. I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Haggard. Comments? All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Now, if we're gonna have a motion to recess the meeting back to the hospital district. Thank you, Director Cote, seconded by Director Sparrow. All those in favor? Okay, motion